Imagine a man born in chains, eyes sharpened by centuries of unseen suffering. He watches his master not with hatred, but with the quiet certainty of the grave. One ordinary dawn in 1851 Virginia, he speaks words that should never leave a slave's lips: "You will not make this journey." And the master, he never does. Because death had already claimed him in secret. This is no ghost story. This is divine reckoning, whispered from the shadows of the South. The wind that swept across the Rivanna River in the spring of 1851 carried more than the scent of blooming dogwood and fresh-turned earth. It bore the weight of unspoken truths, the kind that cling to the soul like Spanish moss to ancient oaks, persistent, haunting, impossible to shake. These were the days when the veil between the living and the eternal thinned in Albemarle County, Virginia, not in grand cathedrals or revival tents, but in the hushed corners of a red-brick plantation house perched like a sentinel on a gentle rise. The Hartwell estate was no mere farm, it was a kingdom built on blood and soil, its foundations sunk deep into the sins of a nation that had forgotten the God who sees all. What we know of that fateful season comes not from grand ledgers or official proclamations, but from the fragile threads of memory: a postal clerk's trembling journal, discovered in a forgotten attic trunk, a doctor's clinical notations, yellowed with age and archived in the vaults of the University of Virginia, a housemaid's whispered confession, captured decades later by a circuit-riding preacher gathering the oral histories of the freed. These fragments paint a portrait too raw for the history books, too laced with the divine irony of justice deferred, yet inexorably delivered. At its heart stood two men bound by iron and fate: William Hartwell, the reluctant heir to a legacy of dominion, and Nathaniel, the enslaved attendant whose gaze pierced the veil of time itself. Picture the estate as it was then, under the relentless Virginia sun. The main house, erected in 1798 by William's grandfather, a Revolutionary War veteran who had bartered his musket for land grants, rose 2 stories high, its red bricks baked from the very clay of the fields it overlooked. White columns guarded the portico like silent sentinels, their paint peeling faintly in the humid air, a subtle decay mirroring the moral rot within. 6 chimneys pierced the slate roof, belching smoke from hearths that warmed the privileged while the quarters below echoed with the weary songs of the bound. Fields of tobacco stretched outward in regimented rows, their broad leaves rustling like conspirators in the breeze, fed by the sweat of 37 souls who toiled from can to cant. The Rivanna River coiled at the property's edge, its waters dark and murmuring, carrying whispers from upstream plantations where similar shadows lurked. William Hartwell, 43 that year, was a man adrift in the current of his own inheritance. Letters from his cousin Margaret Daniels, preserved in a family Bible, reveal a soul fractured by duty. He had dreamed of law books and Richmond courtrooms, of arguing cases under gaslight rather than tallying yields under the noonday glare. But fate, or perhaps the hand of a god weary of unchecked power, intervened when his father tumbled from a horse in 1847, leaving William to shoulder the yoke he had never sought. He moved through his days like a shadow in his own skin, Margaret wrote in 1852, her ink blotched with tears. Competent, yes. But joyless. As if the plantation were a prison of his own making, and the chains on his people were but echoes of those binding his spirit. By county standards, William was neither tyrant nor saint. He shunned the lavish balls and political intrigues that defined his peers, preferring solitude to spectacle. His overseer, Thomas Garrett, would later swear under oath that the master was fair in measure, distant in heart. William rose at 5 each dawn, breakfasted alone at 6, inspected the fields until noon, lunched sparingly, and retreated to his study by 8, reading by lamplight until sleep claimed him. His routine was a metronome of routine, ticking away the hours with mechanical precision. The enslaved folk marked time by his footsteps, as cook Elizabeth Morris confided to her daughter, Master Hartwell was like the river clock, steady, unyielding. But rivers bend, child. And so did he, in the end. Yet beneath this facade simmered a deeper unraveling. William's life was a parable of unrepented sin, the planter's curse of dominion without mercy, wealth without wisdom. He attended church sporadically, mouthing hymns that rang hollow against the backdrop of his fields. In the quiet theology of the enslaved, such men invited the gaze of the Almighty, the one who numbered the hairs on every head and marked the sparrow's fall. William Hartwell was blind to it all. But Nathaniel saw. Nathaniel. No surname etched in stone, no lineage traced in faded registers. He appeared in the records only as Hartwell's Nathaniel, a cipher defined by service. Born into bondage around 1816, he had labored in the fields as a youth, his back bent under the same sun that scorched the tobacco. But Providence, or perhaps a flicker of maternal grace, intervened. William's mother, Catherine Hartwell, a woman of fervent Methodist faith, had defied the edicts of fear. In the early 1820s, before Nat Turner's 1831 uprising hardened Virginia's laws like Pharaoh's heart, she taught a handful of enslaved children to read the good book. "The word is light," she would say, her voice soft in the quarter's dim glow. Nathaniel, then a wide-eyed boy of 8 or 9, absorbed it like parched earth drinks rain. By the time her husband forbade it, the seed had taken root. Literacy became Nathaniel's quiet rebellion, a forbidden key to worlds beyond the lash. William tolerated this anomaly, perhaps out of inertia, perhaps sensing its utility. He assigned Nathaniel the role of personal attendant, laying out garments at dawn, polishing boots to a mirror sheen, accompanying rides to neighboring lands, refilling glasses at table. Most crucially, in 1848, William purchased a grand ledger from a Charlottesville stationer, a tome bound in supple leather, 12 inches tall and 9 wide, its pages crisp and awaiting ink. For household accounts, he decreed. Nathaniel was to log expenditures, inventories, repairs. It was menial, yet it granted paper, quill, and solitude, gifts rarer than manumission in that era. For 2 years, the ledger served its purpose. Thomas Garrett inspected it often, finding only dry tallies of salt pork and seed. But in early 1850, something shifted. The entries evolved, as Elizabeth Morris glimpsed one sweltering July afternoon when Nathaniel left the book open on the kitchen table. No longer mere ledgers of commerce, the pages brimmed with observations, meticulous, detached, like the chronicles of a biblical scribe tallying the plagues. March 12, 1851, 1 read. Master rose at 5 and 7 minutes. Drew 3 breaths before the cough seized him at table. Lasted 4 seconds. Declined the second coffee, eyes distant as if beholding unseen horizons. March 19, hands trembled signing letters. Right hand only. Tremor, 4 seconds. He did not mark it. March 24, paused twice on the stairs. 8 seconds each. Breath came shallow, like the wind before a storm. Page upon page, a litany of frailty, dismissed inspections, refused meals, graying complexion under lantern light, pacing in the midnight hours. No judgments, no pleas, just facts, etched with the precision of a prophet recording omens. Elizabeth felt ice in her veins as she read. It was like peering into the book of life and death, she later told her granddaughter, her voice hushed even in freedom's light. Not a doctor's notes, but God's ledger. Nathaniel wasn't guessing. He was witnessing the unraveling. When Nathaniel appeared in the doorway, his presence a silhouette against the kitchen fire, Elizabeth froze. He did not rage. Instead, his eyes' deep pools of quiet knowing held hers. "You see it now," he murmured, voice like river stones under current. "Someone must watch. Someone must bear witness, even when the world turns blind. For the truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. It echoes in the chambers of eternity." She asked why. His reply lingered like incense, because the Almighty demands it. The oppressor builds towers on sand, but the watcher records the cracks. Redemption begins in the seeing. This ledger was no idle diary. It was a mirror to the soul's decay, a spiritual indictment veiled in ink. In the theology of the quarters, Nathaniel's vigil echoed the prophets of old, Elijah confronting Ahab, Jeremiah weeping over Jerusalem's fall. William Hartwell's life, built on the backs of the bound, was ripening for harvest. And Nathaniel, the least of these, had become the vessel of divine sight. The morning of May 3 dawned unremarkable, the sun cresting the horizon in hues of blood and gold, painting the fields in ethereal light. Workers shuffled toward the rows, hoes slung over shoulders, their songs a low hymn of endurance. In the house, Elizabeth stoked the stove, the sizzle of ham fat mingling with wood smoke. Nathaniel moved with ritual grace, laying out William's linen shirt and waistcoat, the fabric still warm from pressing. The study awaited, its mahogany desk gleaming under slanted rays. William descended at 6 sharp, his boots echoing on the oak stairs like judgment's footfall. He claimed his seat at the table's head, fork poised over eggs and biscuits. Nathaniel stood sentinel by the sideboard, a shadow in service. Thomas Garrett joined for the day's brief, his presence a nod to hierarchy. "I depart for Richmond on the 9th, William announced, voice clipped, eyes on his plate. "Contracts for the crop." "5 days, perhaps." "Garrett, you hold the reins." Garrett nodded. "As you say, sir." "Then, the rupture." Nathaniel's voice cut the air, calm, uninflected, yet thunderous in its defiance. "Master will not make that journey." The words hung, heavier than chains. William's fork stilled mid-air. Garrett's head snapped up. Elizabeth paused in the doorway, tray trembling in her hands. William set the utensil down with deliberate calm, his gaze lifting to meet Nathaniel's. "What did you say?" Nathaniel's posture remained impeccable, hands clasped before him. "The journey will not occur, sir." No anger flared in William's eyes, only a flicker of something deeper, curiosity laced with dread. "Why speak such folly?" "Because it is fact, sir. I have observed. The patterns reveal it." "Observed?" William leaned forward, voice edged with bewilderment. "Explain yourself." "I watch, sir. As I have always watched. The ledger bears witness. Your steps falter. Your breath labors. The body whispers what the spirit denies." Silence swallowed the room, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle. William studied his attendant, this man who had served without complaint, now uttering truths like oracles from Sinai. "You presume much." "I presume nothing. I record what is." William dismissed him with a wave, yet his eyes lingered as Nathaniel retrieved the ledger and withdrew. Later, alone with Garrett, William stared at his untouched meal. "Leave him," he muttered when Garrett offered rebuke. "I would see if he speaks true." 3 days hence, on May 6, the prophecy unfolded. William awoke to agony, a vice gripping his gut, twisting like the serpent in Eden. He could not rise, let alone ride to Richmond. Dr. Marcus Sullivan arrived by midday, his gig rattling up the drive. His log, now relic in Charlottesville's archives, chronicled the descent with sterile precision, yet beneath lay echoes of biblical plague. May 6, summoned to Hartwell. Patient Abed, racked by abdominal spasms. Wretches all sustenance. Perspiration profuse, pulse racing at 96. Ashen pallor, pupils dilated like one beholding abyss. Onset sudden at 5. No fever. Query, acute colic or early cholera miasma? Administered laudanum. Broth only. The days blurred in torment. May 7, symptoms eased, but frailty lingered. May 8, improvement marked, yet William's eyes held shadows. The Richmond trip dissolved into postponement, then oblivion. Nathaniel uttered no word of vindication. He tended as before, his silence a deeper judgment. Elizabeth cornered him in the pantry, voice urgent. "How did you foreknow?" "I knew only the journey's end," he replied, eyes steady as ancient stars. "Not sickness. Not death's shadow yet." The patterns spoke. "The rest belongs to the one who ordains." Dr. Sullivan's final note, May 14, full recovery apparent. Pulse steady, color restored. Episode deemed transient dyspepsia. Resume duties. But recovery masked a deeper metamorphosis. William began to watch Nathaniel not as master eye servant, but as penitent eyes confessor. Garrett noted it in a letter home, the master shadows the man like a hound its prey. Questions trivial, stares prolonged. He knew, Hartwell mutters. How? Elizabeth saw it too, William lingering in doorways as Nathaniel dusted shelves, his gaze probing for secrets. Like a man haunted by his own reflection, she recalled. The climax brewed on May 16th's Eve. William summoned Nathaniel to the study, lamplight casting elongated shadows on walls lined with unread tomes. Housemaid Margaret Ashby, passing with linens, paused at the door, compelled by tones laced with desperation. I must know, William's voice rose, not in rage but plea. You foretold the journey's failure. Days later, illness felled me. Coincidence? Or sorcery? Nathaniel's reply flowed even, a river of truth. No sorcery, sir. Only sight granted by the patterns of flesh and time. How? William pressed, papers crumpling under fidgeting hands. I observed the small deaths within the living. The tremor before the fall. The gray before the grave. You, sir, carry the weight of unconfessed burdens. The fields cry out. The blood of the bound stains the ledger of heaven. A pause stretched, heavy as judgment. Margaret's skin prickled. Are you watching me still? William whispered. Always, sir. As the Lord watches the sparrow. As justice watches the unrepentant. And what do you behold now? Nathaniel's silence lingered 5, 6 heartbeats before his words fell like stones into still water. I see the end approaching, sir. Not in days, but in the turning of seasons. The body weakens. The soul, it trembles at the threshold. Repent, Master Hartwell. For the watcher records not for vengeance, but for mercy's last call. The door creaked as Margaret fled, her heart pounding with the weight of prophecy. Outside, the Rivanna whispered on, carrying secrets toward the sea. William Hartwell sat alone, the ledger unopened on his desk, its pages a silent testament to the divine arithmetic of sin in sight. In the quarters that night, under a moon veiled by clouds, the enslaved gathered in hushed circles. Nathaniel's words spread like embers, not rebellion's spark, but a quiet flame of hope. For in his vision lay the echo of Exodus, the oppressed bearing witness to Pharaoh's fall. Divine retribution wore no crown, only the humble guise of a slave with eyes that pierced eternity. And so the summer of 1851 unfolded, heavy with unspoken portents. The tobacco ripened, but so did the shadows in William's gaze. Nathaniel continued his vigil, ledger in hand, recording the inexorable march. For in the theology of the bound, every observation was a prayer, Lord, let the truth set us free. Even if freedom came only in the grave's embrace. The evening shadows lengthened across the Hartwell estate on May 16, 1851, as if the sun itself hesitated to set on the revelations brewing within the red brick walls. The air hung thick with the scent of honeysuckle and river mud, a deceptive sweetness masking the spiritual rot that had taken root in the heart of the plantation. In the study, where lamplight danced like fireflies trapped in amber, William Hartwell confronted Nathaniel not as master to servant, but as a mortal begging insight from a seer. The room's heavy oak shelves groaned under volumes of forgotten law and ledger, their spines cracked like the facade of William's composure. Dust motes swirled in the golden glow, each one a silent witness to the unraveling. Margaret Ashby, the young housemaid whose hands still bore the calluses of field labor from her earlier years, paused in the dim hallway, linens clutched to her chest like a shield. The door stood ajar, spilling slivers of light onto the polished floorboards that creaked under her weight. William's voice pierced the quiet, edged with a vulnerability rarely heard from men of his station. Are you watching me now? The words carried the weight of a confession, a plea to the unseen God who judges in silence. Nathaniel's response came after a breath-held pause, his tone measured, resonant with the gravity of ancient prophets. Always, sir. As the heavens watch the earth below. Then, the crux, what do you see? Margaret leaned closer, her heart thudding like distant thunder over the Rivanna. Nathaniel's words fell deliberate, each one a stone cast into the pool of William's soul, rippling outward with inexorable truth. I see a man adrift in the currents of his own fear, sir. A soul grappling with shadows he cannot name. You gaze upon me and wonder, am I foe or faithful scribe? The answer is neither. I am your witness, the one who beholds the fullness of your being, unfiltered by pretense or power. William's chair scraped against the floor, a harsh rasp echoing the scrape of conscience. Which are you, then? Speak plain. I am the mirror you dare not shatter, sir. I record the divine script etched in your days, the tremors of flesh echoing the quakes of spirit. Sin unconfessed weighs like lead, pulling the body toward the grave. Redemption whispers, but you must listen. Show me, William demanded, his voice cracking like dry parchment. That ledger you clutch like a talisman. Reveal what you've inscribed in the shadows. Footsteps approached the door, and Margaret fled up the stairs, her pulse racing with the thrill of forbidden knowledge. Glancing back, she caught Nathaniel's silhouette in the threshold, ledger in hand, his eyes meeting hers, not with reproach, but with a knowing serenity, as if sharing the burden of witness. In that gaze lay the essence of his power, awareness without malice, a spiritual vigilance born of bondage yet transcending it. Like the biblical Daniel interpreting dreams for kings, Nathaniel held the keys to mysteries that humbled the mighty. What transpired next, as William pored over those pages, became the pivot upon which the estate's fate turned. The ledger, once a vessel for mundane tallies, now brimmed with revelations that stripped the soul bare. Dr. Marcus Sullivan arrived the following day, May 17, his horse's hooves crunching gravel under a sky bruised with impending rain. A routine visit to affirm recovery turned into a confrontation with the uncanny. He found William in the study, the books blade open, his face a mask of ashen dread, eyes hollowed like those of a man who had glimpsed his own tomb. Sullivan's log, etched in precise script amid the archives, captured the scene with a physician's detachment laced with unease, patient seated amid disarray, ledger before him. Expression, profound disquiet, as if beholding a specter. William thrust the book forward, pages fluttering like trapped birds. The early entries were banal bolts of cloth at $2 per yard, barrels of flour inventoried. But from early 1850, the narrative shifted, a meticulous catalogue of human frailty. May 4, 1850, Master rose at 5:03, paused 3 breaths before dressing. Cough, 5 seconds, dry and persistent. June 11, tremor in left hand while holding quill, 4 seconds. Ink blot on correspondence. August 22, ascended stairs with 2 halts, each 8 seconds. Breath labored, as if ascending Calvary. Over 50 pages, spanning seasons, Nathaniel had chronicled the minutiae, unfinished meals, midnight pacings heard through floorboards, lapses in speech mid-sentence, graying pallor under morning light. No emotion tainted the words, just facts, aligned like stars in a constellation of decline. Sullivan cross-referenced his own notes, a dismissed fatigue here, a trivial ache there. Nathaniel had woven them into a tapestry of inevitable downfall, perceiving patterns where medicine saw only fragments. Why this vigil? Sullivan pressed Nathaniel, who stood impassive by the window, sunlight haloing his form like a reluctant saint. To discern the divine design, sir. Every life is a pattern woven by the almighty threads of health fraying into shadow. Master Hartwell merits such seeing, most wander unseen, their sins and sorrows unrecorded. Only him? Why? Nathaniel's eyes, deep as ancestral wells, held steady. Because the oppressor must face the oppressed's gaze. In that reflection lies justice or mercy, if heeded. The Bible speaks of watchers, angels recording deeds. I am but a humble echo. Sullivan departed troubled, his log concluding with philosophical unease. This observation grants power in verse to station a slave wielding knowledge over his lord. If sight begets foresight, does voicing the pattern summon its fulfillment? A question for theologians, not physicians. In the ledger's wake, the estate pulsed with altered rhythms. William's routine fractured, he wandered rooms like a ghost, ledger in hand, interrogating Nathaniel. With a fervor bordering on devotion. When did it begin? This, unraveling, he'd ask, voice trembling like leaves in autumn wind. Nathaniel responded with patient grace, the first tremor, Sir, April 1849. A mere second, but the seed of greater quakes. Why me alone? You bear the weight of chains not your own, sir. The soul's ledger tallies such burdens. Repentance could alter the weave. Thomas Garrett observed the shift, his testimony painting a man ensnared by his own reflection, William poring over entries for hours, summoning Nathaniel to elucidate. That hesitation mounting the horse, foreshadowing weakness? William probed. Yes, sir. The body betrays the spirit's unrest. Headaches forgotten by William but immortalized in ink, coordination slips dismissed as trifles now loomed as omens. It was as if Nathaniel had scripted William's demise from observations alone, a spiritual alchemy turning sight into prophecy. Elizabeth Morris whispered to kin, like reading one's eulogy while breath still stirs. Nathaniel didn't curse him, he revealed the curse already laid by unrighted wrongs. By May 22, the confrontation peaked. Evening enveloped the house in velvet dusk, crickets chorusing like a Greek tragedy's backdrop. William summoned Nathaniel, the study aglow with multiple lamps, casting elongated shadows that danced like accusing fingers. Margaret and Elizabeth lingered in the hall, drawn by raised voices, a mosaic of desperation. "Tell me the truth," William implored, pacing the Persian rug worn thin by worry. "The pattern, what end does it foretell?" Nathaniel, ledger open, traced lines with a steady finger. "The observations accumulate, sir. Fatigue deepens, like roots seeking water in drought. The divine clock winds down. Am I dying?" William's voice broke, a raw plea echoing Job's lament. Silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then, "Yes, sir. The pattern heralds departure, months, not years." Clearer with each dawn. William recoiled, chair toppling with a crash. "Out. Take your damning words." Nathaniel withdrew unhurried, passing the women with serene poise, as if absolving them of eavesdropping. From within came sobs, a master's armor crumbling under truth's weight. Word rippled through the estate like wildfire in dry grass. In quarters lit by tallow stubs, enslaved voices murmured in hushed counsel. Samuel Cross, field hand with hands gnarled from toil, recalled decades later, no glee in it. "Master's fall meant our scattering, sold like chattel to crueler hands." Was Nathaniel witch or wonder? His eyes saw through flesh to fate, a gift from the god of Exodus. White staff buzzed openly, Garrett cornered Nathaniel by stables redolent of hay and horse sweat. "You dare predict death?" "Not predict, sir, perceive. Data weaves patterns, life's equation solves itself. Curse or calculation?" "Neither. Witness. Truth liberates, even in chains." William's decline accelerated, a cascade of subtle erosions. Sullivan's visits multiplied, his notes a litany of bafflement, fatigue like leaden limbs, sleepless nights haunted by ledger ghosts, appetite fled like faith unmoored. Tremors danced in hands once steady, confusion clouded thoughts. "No malady manifests," he wrote, "yet vitality ebbs as if soul-sick." In private missives, Sullivan pondered, fear as fatal as fever? Knowledge accelerating doom, a psychological plague? Jonathan Hartwell arrived mid-June, summoned by Garrett's urgent plea. His letters to wife Clara painted horror. William Gaunt, obsessed, ledger his Bible. He stares at Nathaniel, seeking self in the slave's sight. "Send him away, I urge." "No," he counters. "He alone testifies to my existence." Sessions ensued, Nathaniel reciting entries, William transfixed. Breath labored, 3 months trend. Appetite halved. Sleep fractured. "What am I?" William whispered. "Your judge? Executioner? Your mirror, sir." Divine justice reflected. Redeemed the time remaining. July scorched the fields, tobacco wilting under unrelenting sun mirroring William's fade. Bedridden, skin sallow as parchment, weight melting like wax. Sullivan's final entries resigned, no pathology, yet death approaches. The body yields to an unseen verdict. In the quarters, prayers rose like smoke, for Nathaniel's protection, for chains breaking. William, in delirium, clutched the ledger, murmuring, he saw. God saw through him. The estate held breath, suspended between earthly power and eternal reckoning. Nathaniel's gaze, born of suffering, had pierced the veil, revealing not just death, but the spiritual debt of dominion. In that revelation lay terror, and perhaps, for the bound, a glimmer of holy vindication. The sultry haze of late summer draped over the Hartwell estate like a shroud, the air thick with the metallic tang of impending storms and the faint, acrid scent of decay seeping from the upper chambers. August 1851 in Albemarle County was a season of reckoning, where the Rivanna River swelled with rain-swollen fury, mirroring the turbulent souls within the red brick manor. Thunderheads gathered each afternoon, their low growls a celestial admonition, as if the heavens themselves mourned or judged the unraveling of William Hartwell. His bedroom, once a sanctuary of polished mahogany and starched linens, now reeked of laudanum and sweat-soaked sheets, the curtains drawn against the merciless sun, casting the space in perpetual twilight. Lamplight flickered weakly, throwing grotesque shadows that danced like demons across walls adorned with faded portraits of ancestors, men who had wielded power without question, blind to the divine ledger tallying their deeds. Dr. Marcus Sullivan's visits had become a grim ritual, his black bag a harbinger of futility. His log, preserved in the university's dim archives, chronicled the enigma with a physician's frustrated precision. July 3, no identifiable pathology, yet systemic shutdown proceeds apace. Organs falter in unison, as if orchestrated by an unseen conductor. By July 9, William's lucidity ebbed like the tide, his grasp on Sullivan's hand desperate. Can knowledge slay, doctor? Is being beheld utterly lethal? Sullivan, schooled in humors and leeches, had no balm for such queries. July 15, weeks remain, perhaps. Cause elusive, comprehensive failure. The servant's foresight haunts, coincidence or catalyst? In the theology of the quarters, William's decline echoed the plagues of Egypt, a divine scourge upon the house of bondage. His body, once robust from inherited privilege, now withered, a living parable of Proverbs' warning. The way of the wicked is like deep darkness, they do not know what makes them stumble. Staff whispered of spectral forces, but Nathaniel knew it was the weight of unexamined sin, the spiritual debt of mastery over men, manifesting in flesh. William oscillated between craving Nathaniel's presence and banishing him, a bond forged in the crucible of revelation, master and witness entangled in a dance of dread independence. Elizabeth Morris, stirring pots in the kitchen below, confided to her kin, Master clung to Nathaniel like a drowning man to driftwood. Feared him, aye, but needed that gaze, the one that pierced illusions. Truth's blade cuts deep, child, but it cleanses the wound of lies. On July 18, amid sheets damp with fever sweat, William summoned Nathaniel. Jonathan and Thomas flanked the bed, the room heavy with the rasp of labored breaths. William's eyes, sunken and fever-bright, fixed on his attendant. Did you orchestrate this? Poison? Curse? Speak. Nathaniel, posture unyielding as an oak rooted in storm, replied without flinch, No, sir. No toxin tainted your cup, no incantation whispered in shadows. I merely observed the divine script inscribed in your form. Patterns of frailty, etched by time and perhaps by the Almighty's justice. But you foresaw. Why reveal, knowing the torment? A pause, pregnant as the storm's hush before lightning. You demanded truth, sir. And every soul merits sight of its horizon even if shadowed. Ignorance is no mercy, it's the thief of preparation. Repentance blooms in knowing. William's whisper cut the air, I curse the day you spoke. Each dawn mocks me, is this the last? Pains echo as harbingers. You've condemned me to die endlessly in mind before body yields. Torture, without touch. Nathaniel's gaze softened, a flicker of compassion amid stoic resolve. Sorrow for your pain, sir. But not for truth unveiled. The Bible bids, know the truth, and it shall set you free. Even unto death. William turned to the wall, silence his only retort, as thunder cracked outside, a heavenly punctuation to the exchange. August brought relentless tempests, mud-choked roads mirroring the estate's mired spirit. William's breath scraped like rusty hinges, audible through the house, a constant dirge. Sullivan's entries grew terse, August 2nd, labored respiration, no remedy. Demise imminent. The household hovered in limbo, whispers weaving through halls like vines overtaking untended fields. Jonathan's letters to Clara brimmed with despair, the air chokes with waiting. Nathaniel's vigil persists, I urged his removal, sell him, flog him for this spectral role. But William, in fleeting clarity, rasped, he stays. Witness to the end. As God sees all, so must he. On August 12, miracle amid malaise, William's eyes snapped open, voice steady as in healthier days. Sullivan, Jonathan, Thomas, and Nathaniel encircled the bed. When? William demanded of Nathaniel. The hour? Days, sir, perhaps fewer. The pattern culminates, breaths lengthen pauses, like sentences trailing to period. Certain? As dawn follows night, sir. Have you inscribed it all? Every tremor, every sigh, chronicled for eternity. Record the close, too. Let no detail fade. Witness preserves against oblivion. William nodded, a fragile peace settling like dust after storm. Sullivan noted, acceptance dawns, fear yields to resignation. The servant's words, once poison, now balm? The final week scorched souls and soil alike, heat a furnace forging finality. William drifted in ethereal realms, eyes glazing over vistas unseen. Nathaniel claimed vigil by the bed from August 20th, ledger ever present, quill dipping into ink like a priest anointing the dying. August 21st, breaths erratic, gaps of 10 seconds, soul hesitating at threshold. August 23rd, sustenance refused, lips parched as desert sands, emblem of spiritual thirst unquenched. August 25th, consciousness flees, gaze vacant, unmoored from earthly anchors. Others came and went, Jonathan with furrowed brow, Sullivan with futile poultices, staff with murmured prayers. But Nathaniel endured, a sentinel of sight, embodying the biblical watcher, for the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous and his ears are attentive to their prayer, but the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. August 27th, in a lucid gasp, William seized Nathaniel's arm, veins pulsing under papery skin. Why me? Why your gaze upon my unraveling? Nathaniel met the plea, you wandered unseen, sir, mother gone, father dust, no kin to mirror your soul. Brother distant, servants shadows. Invisibility is the true bondage. I chose to see all of you. From vigor's peak to valley's shadow. To witness holy is divine grace. You beheld my doom. I beheld your life entire, its glory and grief. The pattern encompasses both, to see one demands the other. Astonishingly, William's lips curved, thank you. You are welcome, sir. Will memory hold me? In ink eternal, your essence preserved against time's erosion. A tear traced William's cheek, release in revelation. He spoke no more. September 1st dawned veiled, the estate hushed as a sepulchre. At 4:11 a.m., as faint light kissed the horizon, William's chest rose thrice, shallow, spaced, surrendering. Then stillness. No thrash, no cry, just cessation, gentle as a sigh. Nathaniel observed, confirming the hush. Then, by lamp's glow, inscribed, September 1st, 1851, for 11 a.m., Master William Hartwell's breaths concluded. Pattern fulfilled. Decline, 16 months from inception. From pronouncement, 121 days. All verified. Jonathan, entering, beheld the scene, ledger closed, Nathaniel rising. It is done, sir. Shall I prepare him? Nod. In death's wake, Albemarle buzzed with rumor, poison, hex, happenstance. Sheriff Robert Dawson probed, interviewing under oath. Sullivan denied foul play, staff affirmed Nathaniel's innocence. The ledger, scrutinized over days, baffled, extraordinary precision, no fabrication. Yet this vigilance borders violation. Observation as assault? Dawson's report, no crime. Prediction proved prescient, not pernicious. Privately, unease lingers. Charting demise with such detachment, cruelty cloaked in neutrality. Law silent on such shadows. Jonathan inherited, but shunned, estate sold, enslaved scattered. Elizabeth to Charlottesville hearths, Margaret southward, Samuel with field kin to Southside. Nathaniel's path? Jonathan's letter, a third path, neither sale nor retention. Freedom? Exile? Samuel's 1902 tale, December encounter on Charlottesville's fringe. Nathaniel, ledger in arm, freer in stride. Freed? Samuel gasped. I burden too heavy for ownership. Whither now? To those unseen. I watch, record bearing witness. Hartwell not last, invisibility plagues many. I illuminate. Again? With care, knowledge gifts or burdens. My resistance, seeing what masters blind to. Truth outlasts chains. Did you slay him? No, merely read the divine inscription in his form. Death inevitable, I but heralded. And the ledger? The December sun hung low over the Charlottesville road in 1851, casting elongated shadows that stretched like accusing fingers across the frost-kissed earth. Dust motes danced in the pale light, stirred by a chill wind carrying the faint, bitter scent of woodsmoke from distant hearths. Samuel Cross, his hands roughened from years under the lash, trudged along the rutted path, his mind heavy with the dispersal of the Hartwell folk scattered like autumn leaves by Jonathan's indifferent hand. The air hummed with the quiet desolation of winter, bare branches clawing at the sky like skeletal prayers unanswered. Ahead, a solitary figure moved with deliberate grace, a leather-bound tome tucked under his arm like a sacred relic. "Nathaniel?" Samuel's voice cracked the silence, laced with disbelief. The man turned, his face etched with the same unyielding calm that had once unnerved the quarters. Yet something had shifted, a lightness in his bearing, as if the chains of bondage had lifted not just from body, but soul. "Samuel. Providence crosses paths. Where bound?" "Jonathan sold us all, scattered to the winds." "Not I," Nathaniel replied, his voice steady as river stones. "Freedom papers in my pocket." He could neither sell nor stomach me. Burden of witness too great. Samuel's eyes widened, a flicker of awe amid the envy. "Free? And the ledger, that chronicle of masters unraveling?" Nathaniel tapped the book, its cover worn smooth by countless turnings. "Here. Every breath, every tremor, from dawn of decline to final hush. A testament eternal. What purpose? What truth in such shadows? A life unveiled, Samuel. Most drift unseen, sins and sorrows unrecorded, fading like mist at morn. Master Hartwell, he was beheld holy. A gift from the Almighty's gaze, though he recoiled. Divine justice demands witness, the oppressed scribe the oppressor's end." Samuel shivered, not from cold, but the chill of revelation. "You'll do it again? Watch another's fade?" Nathaniel's gaze drifted north, toward horizons of promise. "With mercy's temper. Knowledge wounds as it heals. But yes, where invisibility reigns, I illuminate. Patterns repeat, souls cry for seeing. Who bids this vigil? Myself. In bondage, they stole all save sight, memory, understanding. This is resistance, to see the unseen, record the forgotten. Truth outlasts tyrants." No more words passed. Nathaniel nodded farewell, turning toward freedom's call. Samuel watched him diminish, a silhouette against the dying light, until a bend claimed him. Never again did paths converge, but Samuel's twilight years echoed with wonder. Did Nathaniel persist, ledger ever growing, a prophet in shadows? The ledger's fate weaves through history like a ghost thread in a fraying tapestry, elusive, insistent. Sheriff Dawson pored over it in September 1851, his notes confessing unease, a chronicle too precise for comfort, observation as subtle blade. Yet no crime clung to its pages. Post-investigation, it vanished from records, no mention in estate inventories, Jonathan's letters silent as the grave. Thomas Garrett, queried years later, shrugged ignorance, gone with the man himself. Scholars posit Nathaniel carried it into liberty, a talisman of reclaimed power. Perhaps it journeyed north, past to kin or comrades in abolition's underground, free black circles where literacy bloomed defiant. Or lost, consumed by flame, discarded in migration's haste, buried with its keeper. But whispers endure, oral veins pulsing through generations, hinting survival. In 1871 Philadelphia, a document merchant cataloged a bound volume, Observations on a Virginia. Planter's Decline, penned by N. Meticulous, unsettling. Sold? Vanished. Echoes in 1893 Ohio Memoirs, a father's Underground Railroad relic, a slave's record of mastery undone. No trace. 1934 renovations on Hartwell remnants unearthed a leather tome from kitchen walls, Elizabeth's glimpse revived. Foreman James Whitfield sought it, a worker fled with prize. Ads, rewards, fruitless. Whitfield perished pondering its secrets. Apocrypha? Or divine hide-and-seek? Nathaniel's practice may have birthed siblings, ledgers for other souls, patterns charted in freedom's light. A 1857 Boston Journal by abolitionist William C. Nell notes of Virginia Observer, unnamed, documents lives with precision unearthly witness to the overlooked. Nathaniel? In Massachusetts Sanctuary, Post-Fugitive Slave Act shadows, continuing vigil. If so, volumes multiplied, free lives, perhaps, or lingering gazes on power's heirs. Lost to addicts, wars, indifference, yet spiritually potent, records of divine equity. Nathaniel himself dissolves into myth post 1851. Freed? Exiled south? Samuel's tale suggests northbound odyssey, joining literate kin Douglas's orbit, where witness fueled reform. Did he behold emancipation's dawn, 1863's Holy Writ? Vote in Reconstruction's fleeting grace? Father descendants bearing his sight? Or perish unmarked, another soul slavery claimed obliquely? His legacy, a spiritually chilling inversion, slave as seer, master as seen. In biblical echo, like Ezekiel's watchman, Son of man, I have made you a watchman, warn them for me. Nathaniel warned, Hartwell heard, yet unheeded sin's toll, the saga lingered in Albemarle's marrow, resurfacing like buried roots piercing soil. 1863, amid Civil War's carnage, Dr. Sullivan revisited in his journal, wounds horrific, yet Hartwell haunts. Nathaniel's gaze, purer empiricism than my scalpel. He saw without blinders, patterns divine in flesh's frailty. Lesson, attention trumps tomes. Perhaps God's knowledge flows through the least. Slaves schooling physicians. Sullivan succumbed to typhoid 1865, journals archived, seeds for future inquiry. 1893, Dr. Theodore Harrison's paper posited psychosomatic etiology, Hartwell died of dread, prediction self-fulfilling via mind's tyranny over body. Awareness eroded will, accelerating doom. Not curse, but consciousness as catalyst. Debated fiercely, emerging neurology nodded, skeptics cried coincidence. Faded by 1900s, a footnote. 1925, revival via psychologist drive Helen Carrington, burden of being known. Illusions sustain us, ignorance adaptive. Nathaniel shattered Hartwell's, forcing mortal mirror. Too seen, too known, violence sans blow? Privacy from self-essential, its loss, psychic unraveling. Her interviews unearthed Ruth, 93, kin to Elizabeth, mother queried Nathaniel's why. Masters blind to selves see us as chattel, kin as pawns. I mirror truth, mortal, sin-stained, death-bound. Once beheld, no evasion. Truth transforms, curse? Nay, redemption's call. Carrington mused, verbatim or varnish? Yet essence rings, power inverted, watcher empowered. Revolutionary, slave claims gaze, unmasks supremacy. Modern lenses, post-1960s, probe racial alchemy. Dr. James Morrison, 1967, Agency and Observation, Subtle Sabotage. System denied knowledge, Nathaniel seized it, reversing gaze. Master objectified, patterns exposed. Resistance profound, literacy as weapon, truth as lashback. Dr. Angela Richardson, 1990s Oral Probes, Ambivalence in Black Lore heroic, yet chilling. Detached cataloging unnerves, reduces human to data. Questions ethics of watchfulness, even justified. Fragments coalesce, testimonies biased, letters selective, logs clinical, orals morphed. Nathaniel's gift? Astute guess? Or spiritual sight, divine endowment to the bound? Hartwell's end, organic, psychological, providential? Ledger's absence torments, answers inkbound, perhaps. Estate raised 1921, subdivided into suburbia, Oakridge, Meadowview, Amnesiac streets. Residents tread unwitting over hallowed ground, Williams' inspections, Nathaniel's vigils. Folklore whispers, near old house site, now Miller's Ridge colonial yard, watchers feel eyes, intense, patient. Pre-dawn, a presence, accumulator of details, seer of becomings. Suggestion? Or spectral echo, Nathaniel's spirit, ledger ethereal, bearing eternal witness? The tale queries core, what of complete beholding, patterns laid bare, and foretold? Attention as dominion surpassing chains? Known too deeply bearable? We, like Hartwell, might shatter under such mirror. Uncomfortable, yes, but vital, probing observation's sanctity, power's fragility, knowledge's double edge. Like the ledger lost, hidden, awaiting rediscovery, it beckons, dare you be seen?